All right, we are live. So, want to talk today about how important right now this time is to really be clear, right? To kind of put our stake in the ground, not in some like defiant way where I'm ready to take on the world, but where we are operating from a place of real clarity, of deep conviction. I feel like there's kind of a battle going on, right? Even around this concept of identity, and there's I think people that are trying to hijack this sense of where identity comes from. Or I don't mean to say it's some nefarious, purpose behind it, but I do believe it's important right now to understand where does identity come from and how do we really start to define our identity? How do we claim it? Our teams, our employees, our families, right? Identity really comes forward in who I am as an individual, but you're also setting as a leader an identity for your business, right? You're creating an identity for your family. Culture really is just group identity. I think we talked about that last week. And so when you don't have a clear identity, really, what is your basis or framework for making decisions, right? Why do you choose one advertising slogan over another? Why do you choose to hire who you hire? Oftentimes, it's based off of factors that really probably are not leading to your best outcomes, right? The path towards success and really creating an awesome business is a lot more fragmented than it needs to be. And so when we take the time to start by getting really clear on who we are, and we have security in that, it's amazing how quickly our decisions will start to become more dialed in, how we will start to surround ourselves with the right people, right? And when we're operating from a place of security, it's amazing how much better we relate to people. I mean, I've seen this over and over again. Even people who've done our course who came in and said, man, I can't wait to define who I am, because then I'm not going to let anyone, right? I'm going to really claim my authenticity all over the place, and I'm going to be unapologetic. And as they got secure in who they were, they felt no need to do that. It was like, I actually became more compassionate towards my wife. I became more emotionally invested in the team that I led, because I didn't feel like I had to prove things, right? I wasn't out there operating from a place of ego and insecurity. I was operating from a place of strength. And that allowed me to actually then really accept differences, to be more tolerant and compassionate. Does that, I know I just kind of went off there a little bit, but does that make
No,
sense?
man, you teed that up well. And you mentioned kind of driving a stake in the ground, and of course, even that language, right? That's like, oh yeah, all right, there's that sense of autonomy and agency, right?
Yeah,
If I get up in the morning and I'm wondering what are those things that I identify with that I think are great, what a miserable place to be. I mean,
yeah,
it's talk
yep,
about being blown in the wind. But one of the things that I think is just wonderful about this whole topic is that when you laser in on identity, right? Those things I identify with, like you said, that help you make better decisions. Well, that then puts this whole topic of purpose front and center, right?
yeah,
It's like,
yep,
and you know me, I love to tip things on its head to kind of to drive home a point. So, for instance, you get up in the morning and you have this attitude, man, I have absolutely no purpose, right? I I have no idea what effect that I want to have on anybody. There's
yep,
nothing that I like to do. I was made for no reason, and I'm going to sit here and stare at the wall. I mean, it's asinine to think about starting your day with just the opposite of thinking, well, wait a second, what are those things that I value most of all?
yeah,
And so one of the things that I like this idea of driving the stake in the ground, honestly, because it again, like it propels you into this sense of purpose, right? I identify with certain things. Well, what are those things used for, right? but
yep,
but then also, I don't think anybody can escape the fact that when you have, and you talk about this a lot, Andy, the virtuous impact in this world,
yeah, yep,
I mean, it just feels right. And it's so like you said, there's not a heavy-handedness about these things that I hold dear, right? they, they,
yeah.
they might be weighty to me, and I
Excellent
act,
distinction.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I act in alignment with those things, right? But I'm just kind of doing my thing, and it just feels good.
yeah,
And then you get to bump up against people, right? And the old dent in the universe thing. You kind of see your dent here, you see your dent there, and it just feels good to have driven that stake in the ground and saying, these are the things that I value. In fact, these are the things that I don't.
I love that distinction, right? And that creating that dent in the universe, it's not this bulldozer effect, right? You're not
Yeah.
coming in and just
Yeah.
saying, I don't care about you. I'm just going to create a dent, whether you like it or not.
Right.
But really, if I think about the authentic true north exemplars, right? And I think about the people in general who I hear stories about, these people who have massive influence and impact and who clearly are loving the life they're living, right? That they have passion in how they do their job. They have passion in how they connect with their family and in their community. And these people, when they do pass, tend to have a massive celebration of life with sometimes thousands of people showing up,
Right.
right? But it's more about their dent in the universe comes because that they are genuinely invested, right? That there's a sense, that there's a sincerity behind who they are. And so there certainly is a weightiness, that there's real power in clarity and having convictions in what you stand for and how you approach things, right? I always love saying, I think confidence is powerful and it's great, and certainly help coach people to try and establish more confidence. But I like the word certainty better, right? Because certainty is about something you can rely on. It's about really having deep convictions in what you know to be true about yourself. When you operate with that, I feel like confidence, sometimes it kind of ebbs and flows based off things I don't always have control over. If it's kind of more of a feeling, whereas certainty is something more about an understanding, right, of those things that I do stand on, those things I put stakes in the ground for, things I'd be willing to run through a wall for, right? And the more I have clarity on that, like our teams, they need to have leaders, right? Our families need us to really be not just creating ambiguous, because the more uncertainty that we set, the more ambiguity that we create, it creates chaos for the people who are in our wake, right? It creates a ripple effect that just makes more confusion. It creates more conflict. It increases, right, the tension. That's not healthy. It's really unnecessary. As opposed to when you have a real clarity, right? And so the direction you're heading in, you're heading that in a consistent place, right? You're really doing the things that light up your greatest character strengths in a virtuous way. It's amazing how all of a sudden it empowers everybody else to rise up and do their very best.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And you often use the word, or the phrase, follow the clues. So again, to drive home the point, right? When you have a leader, and again, whether that's parenting or a business or a civic organization, that kind of stuff, when you have someone who shows up who doesn't have, and I'm going to use this phrase, and it might be a little dangerous, but who doesn't have an agenda, right?
Yep.
I mean, so it's then what? Then it's this kind of mealy mouth, marshmallowy existence, and everybody's kind of like, well, where do I fit in here?
Yeah.
As opposed to having someone who has a good and noble, very solid and secure agenda, for that people group or that your family or whatever that is, right? Hey, we know exactly who we are, what we're standing on, where we're going, the types of interactions that we like to have, and that kind of thing. And then also one of the things I love that you say too is this idea of clues, right? Well, follow the clues. It's kind of like the proof is in the pudding. When you do those things, when you have certainty, like you said, well, then your energy rises, you just feel stronger. And I mean, it's just great to be alive. But then again, follow the clue of marshmallow existence. And it's like, oh no.
Yeah.
Not only do I feel insecure in and of myself, but when I'm with people that I'm looking to lead and they're not taking, that rightful place, well, I mean, it just creates so much, like kind of cringy moments. It's not good.
Yeah, it really does. Two quotes that I like that I think relate to this. One comes from Lewis Carroll, the author of Alice in Wonderland. That says that if I don't know where I'm going, then any road will take me there.
Yeah.
Right? So if I don't have clarity in what I stand for and who I am, then again, it really, any path will do. And that can create a whole bunch of inconsistency. It's going to create a whole lot of internal turmoil within your own headspace.
Yeah.
The other one, and I'm going to butcher this. I've never been great with the verbatim quote. So this is and I can't even remember right now who said this. But there's essentially two people in the world. There's people who have already have addressed the question, who am I? And they have a clear, authentic answer. And there's people who are trying to find that answer through every person they meet and in every moment, right? Now, that might be a bit of a false dichotomy, but in general, right?
I think you landed on something. And the reason is because that was my story for a long time. I can't tell you many times, especially in my teens and 20s, I would see someone that I thought, looked like a success, and I'd be like, okay, let me talk to them. Let me
Yeah.
gain
Yep.
something from them, that kind of stuff. And quite often though, right, they had an external, I guess, a persona of success and that kind of thing. But then when I got to know them, there was a whole host of inconsistencies and internal chaos and a randomness about their life that was so unappealing to me. And so I'm with you though. I think that the yeah. Anyway, that's just I totally relate to that. That's my story about that seeking for it, as
Oh yeah.
opposed to what's tapping the brakes
Oh yeah.
and saying, okay, I know full well whatever comes my way today, if it does not align with these things
Yep.
that I've predetermined that are
Yeah.
absolute core to who I am and what I want to be about, I'm going to at least tap the brakes, right, and say, man, not right now. And at the and actually, as I get older and way more secure in who I am way more quick to say no to things and yes to the right things.
Yeah. I mean, I can vouch for the fact that I feel like the momentum and the clarity that you have in talking with you is like next level stuff. And I can so relate, I mean, going into job interviews, and instead of going into it having clarity on the value I bring, right, knowing, well, this is what would be a good role for me, and so am I interviewing them? It was more like, how do I impress them? How do I get them, right? Because I was so looking for the validation that they would offer me by giving me a job. And I said yes to a variety of jobs that instinctively, like gut level, I was like, I don't think this is a good job. And sure enough, right, it ended up being that it was a terrible choice for me because I wasn't going into it with a sense of self-clarity and certainty. I was just looking for that validation. Same thing dating wise, right? I mean, I didn't really have a strategy. And so oftentimes my strategy was just, is there attraction? And hopefully, if they like me, sometimes that was good enough, right? Like there wasn't a sense of, again, feeling like I was impressing who I was onto how I was making decisions. It really came from a place of passivity, and again, that's not what our teams, that's not what our families, it's not what they need. The other end of it, and tell me what you think about this, but I feel like right now that there is a pressure sometimes, it's almost like pick teams, right? There's a sense of you're either with us or you're against us, and kind of painting a picture as, my team is good. So whether that's political beliefs, whether that's around religion, it's a variety of things, right? But it's not allowing for a whole lot of individuality, right? To recognize that within a certain, political beliefs, within a certain job. I was telling someone earlier today, if I told you it as a psychologist, would that really tell you who I was? And I said, no. Within the broad field of psychology, one, you have tons of different specialties. Two, even if I told you what my specialty was, that would do a terrible job of telling you who I was. Now, if I explain to you that I'm someone that loves building relationships, that I have a posture of curiosity and come from a place of non-judgmental and just loving to engineer psychological solutions, right, to help people solve complex problems, like that's what lights me up. That does an awesome job of telling you, why I do what I do, what lights me up. It gives me a roadmap going forward of, what clients to take on, what work to do. And so it allows for individuality, right? That expresses who I am, as opposed to creating this broad sense of, us versus them. Does that make sense?
Oh man, I love that. And I think that, of course, there are some in our culture that are kind of beating the drum of us versus them. I really think that they are absolutely in the minority. I really believe that most people, when you talk to them, they're like, hey, let's sit down and talk about ideas with a sense of curiosity and wonder about maybe there's something, I don't know what I don't know, that kind of thing. And so I'm with you there. I think there's a push to divide. At the same time, I think that most people are pretty reasonable in their approach to learning and growing and that kind of thing too. And I love what you said about, the, like, if you were to say, who am I, right? Well, as a psychologist, people would be, oh, okay. They get a general sense of maybe one thing that you do.
Yeah.
But they would have absolutely no idea the impact that you would have on them, even outside, of your work setting, right?
Yeah.
So who is Dr. Garrett when we're playing, some tennis together, or we're going
That's
camping,
right.
or we're going camping, or we're just having a casual conversation. How does he make me feel when I walk away from him? That kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
that's good.
And I think that that sense of uncertainty, in us, it's a fascinating thing, right? Because if typically, and again, I can relate to this. If when I did not know who I was, right? When I didn't know those things that were just absolutely core and precious to me, those things that gave me goosebumps, like you said, the things I'm willing to run through a wall for.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, what did I do when I was in a room full of strangers, right? A little bit of posturing. Well, hey, I do these things. I've got, a product here. I do a little bit of music. I kind of throw out some stuff that I do.
Yeah.
And I get it. That's kind of it's understandable to know what somebody does. I get that.
Sure.
But at the same time, it was when that's all there is, when that's the only thing for you that is front and center, that's a lonely place to be.
Yeah.
And also there's this idea of, there's this question mark, like you're constantly looking for someone. And I love the paradigm shift that I've had in life in a really, really strong way, right? When I go into a room, I'm not looking to tell everybody my accomplishments. I don't give two rips about that.
Awesome.
I'm like, who in here needs a hug? Like, metaphorically, right? Who needs encouragement? What's going on in here? And because I know the desired impact that I want to have, I want to breathe life into somebody.
Yeah.
And maybe if I don't see him again, that's fine. But I am on mission. I was created for a purpose, just painfully obvious, right?
Oh yeah.
And so I'm not looking to receive. I'm looking to give because my tank is full.
So powerful.
And it just feels. Again, I'm human, right? I struggle just as much as the next person if I don't sleep well and don't eat right, and we've all got battles we're fighting. But in general, the paradigm shift that I've had in the last several years has been completely life-changing. I am on a mission every single day to make those around me better. And part of it is altruistic because it makes me feel better. It makes me feel better for being me, as opposed to this big question mark and, kind of marshmallow existence. I'm just trying to exist, as opposed to having massive impact in a world that, kind of needs some help. There's a lot of people who could use some encouragement.
So powerful. I mean, so much of what you just said there, I think we've talked about a little bit that there's an actual ratio for thriving, that seems to be that it's these 5 kind of positive moments of feeling happy, feeling motivated, right? So whether that be within your own personal psychology, whether that be within your marriage, whether that be in your business. And I don't understand how there's any way that you get anywhere close to the 5-to-1 ratio necessary to thrive without having real clarity and conviction in who you are and what you stand for. Like I would defy that it's not possible. I'd say that those that are thriving, that they are extremely clear in who they are, and you'll see radical consistency in how they make decisions and how they do things, and that the people that they surround themselves with have a sense I feel like I'm being led, right? When you have that security too, as you're saying, it allows you to look up instead of being always worried about my needs and do you like me, give me affirmation. It allows me to stop worrying about those things and allows me to start to say who in the room needs the metaphorical hug, the little aspiration, who needs a little open-ended curiosity, who can I engage with, right, that I can have a fun conversation with and just get to learn about them in ways that's so powerful.
Can I tell you a fun story? So last night, Parker and I, we had a performance last night with my daughter's violin class, and I got to sing a couple of songs there, and just a really fun night. He and I hadn't had any dinner, so we stopped somewhere on the way home, and I was so proud of him because a couple of years ago, he's a good-looking young teenage boy, right, and just as wily-eyed as the next of him. So if a cute girl walks by, he's, he just about falls out of his chair, right, and I love that, right? It's incredibly great and normal and all that kind of thing. Well, the server came and served us, and beautiful young lady and so on. And I could tell they're making eye contact, and Parker's getting red in the face, and I'm just enjoying the moment right there. And jokingly, I said, "Are you going to ask for her number?" And he said, "Well, that would be fun." He goes, "Dad," he goes, "I don't know what kind of a person she is." And he said she may not be a good influence on me. And man, I was so proud of the fact that even at 17 years old,
Yeah.
he knows who he is and what he values, but he knows who he isn't, right? He knows that he's not a fully developed man who can take a lot of hits and take a lot of, possible temptation and things like that. And I love the fact that, I could joke with him about it, but I love the fact that he was dead serious when he looked at me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what she's like. He goes, I would hope that maybe if, I could get to know her better before, I would, talk with her on a regular basis or something like that. And I was so proud of him.
It took me way later than teen years to be able to have a mindset where I look beyond the superficial, right? Where I went beyond just, I got all kinds of, hormones going on right now. And it doesn't matter. There's this idea of the authenticity versus attachment, right? The sense of, do I choose to fit in and belong versus do I choose to be true to myself? And there's many times in which we are confronted, right, where these two things conflict. Do I choose to stick to my values and be true, or the drive to belong and fit in is so powerful, right? That if you haven't clearly defined who you are, and there's amazing studies on this, right? The Stanford prison experiment and all these things, where when the pressure of their environment really kind of pulled, people did things that they would have never thought were possible because they caved. Right. And even the experimenter, the guy running it, Zimbardo, he even kind of transgressed his own moral code and was surprised and recognized that if you don't have a clear sense of who you are, if you don't have clear values guiding your decisions, then the likelihood you're going to stand up to the power of your environment is just incredibly unlikely, if not impossible.
Yeah. So I just, again, it's one of those moments when you tap the brakes and just think, man, yeah, what if I really didn't have a clear constitution? And then, of course, right, you look back in your life and you see those moments that you didn't.
Yeah.
And you acted in ways, you took sometimes massive action in ways that were so counterproductive to your life. And why is that? Again, we're human, right? I get it. But at the same time, if there's moments like that, that's one thing. But if your life, you've got long seasons or years that are defined by making really poor decisions and feeling really incongruent with yourself.
Yeah.
It's probably because you just haven't decided, I'm going to decide what I value in this life, what is absolutely core that I'm going to be standing on, the bedrock, not just the basement, but the cellar. Those things that are so unique to me that I want to not only keep front and center so I don't forget, but then act in alignment with so that my life actually has more joy and I don't feel fake and artificial.
Amen.
Like a generic, I'll be honest. You know me, I love inspiration. I love this idea that even snowflakes are all different, right? The uniqueness piece.
Mm-hmm.
One of my biggest fears is to be generic, to be a copycat, and to be someone who is just kind of one of the other lemmings going through this life and not mattering. And again, not everybody has to have the same desires I do, right?
Yep.
But one of my desires, and I think it's good with a capital G, is that I matter and I matter greatly. And if I were to die tomorrow, that there would be not only a generation, but maybe multiple generations that would remember me because I've had a wonderful and beautiful impact in their lives.
Yeah.
That's it. It's not ego driven. I want my life to matter. And I think that everybody should, period. In fact, if your life doesn't matter, well, then what happens, right? You get depressed. So go figure. You can't not desire that. We weren't made in that fashion.
Yeah. Imagine waking up every day with a real deep conviction and clarity on not just knowing that you matter, but having real specific understanding of why you matter, right? Of knowing what value that your team needs you to show up, right? With that sense of knowing why you matter. Your family needs you to show up in that way. When you do, again, it infuses you with motivation. Life starts getting, when you really understand who you are and you wake up every day with a sense of clear purpose, life gets fun, right? You're able to start to really kind of get more creative in how you show up. You're able to start to really make bold decisions. You're able to start to have more adventure. Like, life just becomes so much more full, as opposed to when we have constant uncertainty kind of guiding us from moment to moment. Really it tends to hijack our brain, where we're operating out of a place of fear, out of a place of self-preservation, right? We get tunnel vision on how we see things, we tend to become very rigid in how we make decisions and how we relate to things.
One of the things that I think is what I love about you and I as being really different people in a lot of ways, right? You, and have said multiple times, your goal in any given room is to be the calmest presence, right?
Yeah.
And so if there's any kind of chaos or fragmentation, you bring a steadiness and a measuredness to that space, and so on. I'll be honest, that's not on my radar. But what's fascinating though is that doesn't take away from me, right?
Yeah.
In the past, I would think, I would be like, well, I guess I need to be like Dr. Garrett. And what's fascinating is I've realized that no, the people in that room, including my own family, they don't need Dr. Garrett. They need me.
That's right.
God placed me in that room with those people at that given time for a reason. And I need to bring the fullest and best parts of myself. And usually that's not calm, by the way, right? It's more energetic. It's more inspirational. It's more, man, I'm going to drive a stake through somebody's heart that's tipped, right, with inspiration and love and courage, but it might hurt them too at the same time. And you might do that, by the way, but just in a different way.
Yeah.
And so I love the uniqueness piece there, and that's is just blows my mind that so many people throughout the span time of history can bring their absolute bedrock uniqueness to any moment, and it works and it matters. And those people and those personalities, when they're operating in that highest good, that summum bonum, it's like, man, it just then the harmony happens, the music happens, that soundtrack just gets more and more powerful.
I love to, as we talk about the uniqueness, the individual uniqueness. Certainly we are part of community, and I think part of authenticity is about recognizing our responsibility to do social good, right? That we do live in relationship to, again, whether it's family members, whether it's the people, our actual neighbors. And so the recognition for to do social good is amazing. But I think a lot of times people do just take on really generic titles about who they are. I am a Christian. I am, and again, that's good. But who are you as an individual? Like, how does that help you to then know what types of decisions you need to make on a daily basis? It might give you a generic sense, right? But as far as what that means for your mission in life and your purpose, if you don't dial down deeper into that, I think a lot of times that's where you tend to get a very dogmatic kind of attachment to who you are. I love, there was a theory of identity where it looked at a spectrum from most mature to least mature. It showed that the least mature were people who had swallowed whole, certain ideas or beliefs about who they were. Again, whether that's religious, political, or any of those things. But they hadn't taken the time to really chew on those and say, well, do I actually believe in those? And if I do, can I explain to you why I believe in those? Can I explain to you what it means to me, right? So that I have this deep roots to it. Now, all of a sudden, I feel secure in being able to explain exactly what I believe and why I believe it, which allows me to feel secure in that, as opposed to, right, when I haven't taken the time to really say, well, why do I believe this? And, what do I believe in? That if someone starts to question, someone doesn't share my beliefs, I'm going to feel threatened all the time, right? I am going to react very harshly to anyone that doesn't share my ideas, anyone that questions. I see this all the time when I'm working with leaders and someone makes a decision where they say something they shouldn't have, and then they're questioned on, why did you do that? And then they become more rigid because they don't know why, right? There's not a sense of them feeling secure in why they made the decision that they did. And so when you have this really dogmatic sense of who you are, you tend to create a very rigid environment around yourself, and you tend to feel perceived threats more than is necessary, and that tends to be felt then by the people around you in ways that can be very damaging, as opposed to, right, the opposite. When you take the time to drill down and you have a deep understanding of who you are, what you stand for, and why, all of a sudden, right, you can have conversations with people that have completely different viewpoints. You can start to really have this shared sense of humanity, right, to have connection. And it might be ultimately that someone doesn't share certain beliefs or values, may not be a great fit for someone you want to let into your innermost circle, right? But you also find that compassion and tolerance, right, that you just become a much more generous, loving, kind of empathetic person. You become an exponentially better leader. Does that make sense?
Oh, I love that. I even think in marriage, I remember when Lisa and I, first got married, it's been 23 years. But if she would say something about my driving, it's kind of like, the typical husband and wife arguments, that kind of stuff. I'd be like, who do you think you are? I'm the best driver that ever, car. I mean, but what was fascinating, that was born out of what? Just a real sense of insecurity.
Yeah.
And now if she corrects me, honestly, I kind of like it. And we have this real playful banter back and forth. I'm like, sometimes I'll even joke and I'll be like, hey, sweetheart, where are you? And I'll, holler in the house somewhere, and I'll go find her. And I'm like, I really could use a good scolding or something like that, just jokingly, right? Like,
Yeah.
you probably need to, tell me where I need to measure up or something like that. And why is that? Because I value our friendship way more than I do about, whatever that particular issue is. So there's a like you said, the rigidity goes away when I value humanity, as opposed to, some type of a system that I'm desperately holding on to just to have some sense of strength or continuity, or, that kind of thing. But when you're secure, in yourself, I mean, a couple of years ago, in fact, I even told her, I said, please correct my driving. Like, if you see I'm going to make a wrong turn, or there's somebody in the blind spot, I mean, speak up. I said, I will never, ever again be defensive with you in that area. It doesn't bother me. I want some help. And it's been really fun. Like, I don't, and I'm finding that when I incorporate some of that into other areas of my life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, wow, especially, right, when those people love you and they mean well for you, that kind of thing.
That's right.
I mean, it almost doesn't get any better to let someone correct you and someone to coach you in a way that it could be
a
little painful. But then when my mission, right, is to not only help others grow, but to grow myself.
Yeah.
This is a journey and a quest of exploration, under the auspices of curiosity, as opposed to that rigidity. It just changes everything. There's no defensiveness. There's no, I mean, like I'm just, digging my feet in, trying to hold on for dear life anymore. No, it's, man, is there something I don't know? This is fantastic. I want to learn something here and grow.
Yeah. People, I think, often do have a tough time prioritizing real time, right? That what really matters here is it really that my desire, because my feelings are hurt, and so now I'm going to punish this person? Is it, really my need to be right? Is it, they started the argument, so I'm going to finish it, or like you said, is it, hey, this is someone I love and I care more about, making this person feel special, creating a safe environment. And again, that doesn't happen if you think that you're going to be able to effectively prioritize what really matters in moments where emotions are stirred, without having predetermined, what matters most to you. It's just not going to happen, right? Or it might happen once, but it's not going to happen with any sense of consistency.
Yeah,
we had a couple go through this program. It was a bit of a power couple, and they had a source of conflict that had been between them for 15 years. And they said, we had gone to counseling, we've done all kinds of things to resolve it. And, we kind of just assumed that this was always going to be the thorn in our side. It doesn't come up every day, but when it does, right, like we just don't see eye to eye. And there's a sense of it really creating some turmoil. And so in going through and really defining who they were and understanding their unique role within the family that they were intrinsically motivated for, ultimately didn't matter anymore. So they walked out and they're like, it's resolved. Like, we just realized that we were overly prioritizing, kind of my need to impress my will onto that person and, getting this person to accept. And as they got more secure in who they were, they just let it go. And all of a sudden that freed them up, right, to have a deeper sense of intimacy and connection. I mean, that couple is absolutely thriving now. It's neat to see. Yeah.
And maybe and a little helps to kind of land the ship here. You said that you used the phrase predetermined. So what's not going to happen if you haven't predetermined those things, right? oh, good luck, right? You're gonna get flooded with cortisol. You're gonna get overwhelmed with some, rigid moment in your life. And if you haven't predetermined those things that are absolute core that you value, that you're going to stand upon, you're probably going to act in a way that is horribly inconsistent with the way that you would want to, and ultimately very productive. And one of the things that I like about the True North Blueprint is that, well, and you use that phrase inner size as opposed to exercise. When you do the inner size work, again, take some work, but then you're opened up to a deeper realm of possibilities of handling situations, handling conflict, increasing joy, increasing purpose, increasing impact. And I'll be honest, I'm 48, so in this stage of my life, I love having impact, and at the same time, I think more than that, I love having peace. And and I'm talking like that exhale.
Oh, yeah.
Like I lay my head down at night and I know that I showed up in a way today. Again, we're human, right? I don't want to paint this weird, this weird, perfect picture.
Yeah.
But I show up in a way that was absolutely intrinsically motivating to me, uniquely to me. And I put my head down at night and I'm like, man, that actually felt really good to be me today, regardless of the obstacles and things blowing. I showed up in a way that was meaningful to me, and it wasn't a generic sense of being a good man and all that nonsense. It was very, very virtuous, and it was me. And I love that.
Love that. I know I got to wrap up here, but we'll just reiterate, right, that we don't need to be adding to the confusion in our families, in our team. There's enough confusion in the world right now, right? There's enough division. There's enough areas in which you're going to experience conflict, and so the fact that we would create a ripple effect that adds to that or doesn't add clarity to it, I promise. Right now, the more you're able to get clarity on that, you're going to weather the storm of some of the things that are going on right now, right? You're going to be more resilient. You're going to be able to stand up. I think of having a really firm foundation. So even as turmoil comes, right, wind and adverse situation, when you're really secure in your foundation, it allows you to remain stable and to remain strong in that, and to even thrive in the midst of challenging times. So, if there's some way that we can help out in anyone with this, again, if it's just pointing in a direction, offering, some research that we found, or if it's more directly, we understand the significance of this. So,
well, and also if you go to ag-thrive.com, right, we're going to be rolling out programs that help people gain absolute clarity, not only in their own lives, but that for their, as a cohesive family unit, business unit, and all that kind of stuff. So be in touch with us. We would love to have you join, kind of our movement here to help people establish, right, to identify those things that are absolutely core, so that they're not just blowing in the wind and wasting not only precious time, because that's all we really have, but then of course very, very precious resources, whether that's financial or otherwise. So yeah,
that's right.
Great discussion today, Gabe, brother. This is wonderful.
Yeah, likewise. All right. Have a good one.
Thanks.